he could be accidentally killed just by being in the wrong bunker at the wrong time, thinking that he was relatively safe. That is a line that I don't even think the Russians have any control over whatsoever.
Hi, welcome to Superpowers, the future of global security here on Times Radio. I'm James Heapy, and today I am joined by Malcolm Nance, a former senior chief petty officer in the United States Navy and now a foreign policy analyst. Malcolm, welcome. It is a busy and fast-moving time in the world of geopolitics, and the best we've got at the moment is that he might or he might not. Will he?
Well, we are really stuck in this game of will he or won't he, and this is especially of Donald Trump's, especially since in the last 24 hours he's decided he's going to do a 2 week pushback on making a decision. Now, if for those of you who know Donald Trump, he is famous for using these 2 week holds to actually become very indecisive. He often wants the situation to resolve itself. You know, there's some things that I think listeners should understand. He has in his head since 1987 that he wanted to do something monumental that would get him the Nobel Prize. And many times he has been making these big peace pushes. Ukraine, nuclear weapons, and other parts of the world where he wants to be seen as the person who makes the ultimate deal, and that ultimate deal is recognized with a Nobel Prize. He appears to be doing that here. He had the Iranians in talks, but to get them where they are, he had to destroy a peace deal that had been done that had limited uranium enrichment by the Iranians by Barack Obama. Well, anything Barack Obama does, Trump throws out the window. Now he restarted it and he wants his Trump version of it. And before he could get there, the Israelis forced his hands by destroying and attacking most of the Iranian infrastructure. But there's critical infrastructure there in the nuclear program they just don't have the capacity to damage.
But it seems to me that Netanyahu knows that he can force the pace on this. So this 2 week hiatus is, as much as Trump will see it as an opportunity to bring the Iranians to heel, Netanyahu will see it as an opportunity to create irresistible momentum that obliges America to follow on in. I just can't see Trump being to Israel what he has been to Ukraine. I just can't see that.
No, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, Donald Trump here is now Israel, been put into a box. Israel is, according to him, his greatest ally. Benjamin Netanyahu, he thinks that a good piece of the conservative American Jewish community got him elected, and he fostered Israel as priority one during his campaign. He's not going to back out from that. But more than anything, Trump does not like to be seen as weak. And Netanyahu has pushed him into a position where the United States is now playing second fiddle to Israel's amazing attack that they've done, even though now this year Iran's counterattacks are actually causing Israel blood. And the only way that the Israel can actually destroy the Fordow nuclear enrichment facility, which is under a literal mountain, is that the United States use its B-2 bombers and its BLU-57 strike bombs, which can penetrate into the mountain. Israel does not have that capacity. So this now puts Trump in a circumstance where Netanyahu can say, only you, Donald, can end the Iranian nuclear program and you'll be considered famous amongst presidents. But on the other hand, we have the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, sending him evangelical messages to only listen to the voice of God and to consider even making a decision on par with that made by Harry Truman, which was an allusion to using a nuclear weapon on Iran. Because the only way you're going to guarantee that complex does not exist in the end is using a tactical nuclear weapon. Let's hope that voices of reason, and I don't mean Laura Loomer, right? Voices of reason are playing out in Washington, and that Trump is actually taking this pause to really give this serious, weighty consideration. On the other hand, he could just be waiting for the USS Gerald Ford to arrive in theater in about 12 days. So that's another consideration for this 2 week window.
So I think it's important for listeners, viewers, to understand that the arrival of all of that military hardware doesn't necessarily mean the decision's been taken. I mean, you have served in the US
Right.
Navy. I've been involved in UK defence policy making. You know, the job of the DoD or the Ministry of Defence in times like this is to set the theatre so that the president has choice. And as I understand it, you will be able to educate us much better. Things like having 2 carriers on station, the right number of bombers in Diego Garcia and other airfields are all part of just giving the president the maximum number of choices so that if he decides to do it, everything's ready. Correct? Or do you think this is already a decision that's been made?
Right. Yeah. If the president is well served, the Joint Chiefs of Staff would be making these recommendations to him to put systems into place. When we did Operation Desert Storm, we had 6 aircraft carriers, and we had what we called the aircraft carrier Saudi Arabia, the aircraft carrier of England. We had resources all throughout the theater. This is a smaller scale operation, but you have to be prepared that the Iranians are going to go in another direction. And that means you can't do it with one aircraft carrier if you have to go to literal war with Iran to defend our allies in the Persian/Arabian Gulf. You have to have the bombers, which we had sent to Diego Garcia. Some got rotated home, but you have to have them in place to actually strike Fordo, the Fordo enrichment facility. Now, be advised, we generally fly those strikes from Missouri, non-stop around the world, strike and land in Guam or return to Missouri. So you don't necessarily need all 6 B-2 bombers in the theater. There are new B-52s there, F-22s that are coming there. So you're seeing a conventional rollout of resources that would give the president proper options in case Iran exercises an option to attack and damage our allies. So a defensive posture, but which has an offensive capacity, would be better if you had 3 aircraft carriers in the region focused on the Iranian threat. So I think that's what you're seeing now is a really conventional movement. What's unconventional is the decision-making process. It's insanely unconventional because it's in Donald Trump's gut. It is not based on intelligence. It's based on, the things he's hearing from people, and I don't mean his director of national intelligence, but what he perceives as a threat. And that's what's going to make this a wild card.
So on this side of the Atlantic, we follow, I think, Tucker Carlson less closely, but his staggering interview with Ted Cruz has certainly made its way pretty heavily onto my social media timelines. And it feels extraordinary to hear a very senior senator basically espouse a commitment to striking Iran based on absolute blind faith in Israel, simply because in the Bible it says you're blessed if you support Israel, cursed if you don't. That is an extraordinary tone of public discourse to provide the background to such a profound decision.
Well, this is not an uneducated person, also. This is a person who went to Harvard University. He was an extraordinary student. He went to law school from Harvard. There is a pantomime. There is a game amongst people who want to remain in MAGA that you have to pretend that you're ignorant. And in some respects, I think Ted Cruz is very ignorant. The greatest weakness of the United States is one that my job as an intelligence professional, I was a senior collector, right? My job was spoke foreign languages, looked like the people in the region, worked for multiple intelligence agencies. But my job was to bring a respect of knowledge of language, culture, geography, history, and tribalism into the intelligence process so that you would be aware of who you're fighting, where you could potentially fight them, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. The simple questions Tucker Carlson asked of Ted Cruz, like, who doesn't know Iran has 92 million people? Well, if you're going to bomb them, you need to know how big a population you're going up against. And they're not homogenous. There are multiple ethnic groups there. But if these people who are generally of one religious sect also have their own individual needs and requirements that are being suppressed or being fulfilled by the Islamic regime government, then how are you making any decisions at all which involves the life and death of U.S. service members, quite possibly the lives of our allies in the Gulf states, right? Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and the entire balance of global trade based on fossil fuels and natural gas. You could be condemning that to death, or serious impact by your ignorance. Look, say what you will about the Chinese. They do not trade on ignorance, right? They trade on depth of knowledge. They are increasing their share in the global marketplace because they now understand Americans are relatively stupid. And I'm not saying that as a cultural critique. I'm saying that as an hard intelligence fact. Americans are, their depth of knowledge is about zero. The Iranians, on the other hand, know everything about the United States. Their depth of knowledge is very, very deep. But they, as a people, will not flip over because Ted Cruz says the Bible says support Israel, and they will not topple their regime because Israeli fighter aircraft are bombing nuclear power plants. Only they will determine their future.
And today we've seen it coming out from the Kremlin official spokesperson that Russia would take quite a strong view of Khamenei being taken out. So if you were in your old job and preparing the intel briefings for the National Security Council, you would, I think, probably have quite an interesting calibration to offer, because the opportunity to end Iran's nuclear program is a good thing. Another round of nuclear proliferation is in nobody's interests. But the fine line between successfully intervening to end their nuclear capability while stopping at anything that starts a regional conflict or, heaven forbid, drags in the Russians and or the Chinese is an almost impossible line to tread. How would you present that advice to the president or the chiefs if you were still doing that?
Well, you're right. It is an impossible line to tread here. And unfortunately, we have people who are willing to erase lines. There are people here calling for the death of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of that country, which in time of war is legitimate. But you can't make that decision. Donald Trump was saying, we know precisely where he is. I have never been to Iran, but I have fought the Iranians. I have been all along their coast. I've been all along their borders of Iraq. It is a massive, massive country. A supreme leader could be sitting in a tea house down the street, nowhere near a command and control facility, operating remotely using notes with his subordinates who will drive 10 miles away and then make a phone call. You can't say that you have the ability to kill him, but he could be accidentally killed just by being in the wrong bunker at the wrong time, thinking that he was relatively safe. That is a line that I don't even think the Russians have any control over whatsoever. None whatsoever. And Israel, on the other hand, for all of their brilliant intelligence, and they have great intelligence, if you want a single man to disappear in Iran, they can disappear. There are many, many different parts. So I'm not sure what measure of control we can do, but we do have the capacity now to end the Iranian nuclear ambitions if we strike the Fordow power plant, collection facility, and bury it. But how long will that last? 10 years, 15 years? I don't know.